Okay, hello students. This is my tutorial on creating an animated wallpaper in Flash. We're going to use the wallpaper that we created in Photoshop and pop it into Flash just over here. So we're going to create a couple of layers and we're going to animate using some motion tweens. So I'm going to introduce you to some of the concepts of animating in Flash, and we're going to create a simple wallpaper. So I'll just scroll through with the playhead. We're just going to make the logo just grow and shrink, and you'll notice in the background as well, just these semicircles are just going to fade in and out as well. So we're just going to play with the opacity, its transparency just a little bit. Okay, so let's get started with the tutorial. So as always, we need to start a new document. So we'll go up to Flash and go File, New. A new document. It really doesn't matter what the size and the width is because we're actually going to change that later, but the default for Flash is 550 by 400 pixels at 24 frames a second. So frames per second is how fast the playhead moves through. So most televisions in Australia for power version move at 25 frames a second. I'm going to change it to 25. If you're in the US, you'll be watching at 29.97 seconds a second. And that's to do with all sorts of things to do with film in the past, but we're not going to get into that. So you just need to remember 25 frames per second for PAL. So, and I'm going to hit OK. I want to make sure that I hit ActionScript 2. I don't want to be using ActionScript 3 just at the moment because that's a programming language and a little bit too complicated for what we really want to do. So I'm just going to hit OK there. Okay, we've got our new document. This white area here is called the stage. In Photoshop it's called the canvas. It's called a stage in Flash because that's where the action happens. So when things are in this grey area over here, so we can actually just say we probably have a rectangle tool. When we create objects outside here, it's only going to show what's in this white area. It's only what's going to show what's in this stage. So this is actually called a pasteboard. So I'm going to actually just highlight and delete all these. Get rid of those and delete them. If you want, you can input some rulers in that inside, but I'm actually just going to leave it as it is. So I'm just going to switch off my rulers. You can also hide the edges as well. So if you tick off pasteboard, okay, it'll actually hide everything in the outside, so it'll be a bit more like Photoshop. So if I draw on the stage, it's actually hiding this here. But I actually want to see my pasteboard because I want to have a better idea about what's coming into the stage and what's exiting if I were to have character animation. So I'm just going to turn the pasteboard on again. There we go, and we can see a rectangle there. Alright, so similarly to Photoshop, we have a toolbar down the side here. Similar sort of tools. We've got a move tool or a selection tool. We've got a transform tool here, which is something we don't have in Photoshop. We've got shapes as well, so you can rectangle, oval, lots of different types of shapes are accessible here. And the same as in Photoshop, if it's got a little black triangle on the side, it means that there's a drop-down menu as well. So we can select an oval tool there, or here is the ink bottle or a paint bucket tool. And there's lots of other types of things here too. Our swatches are the same, so you can choose the colour over here. You can actually select the circle here and a colour wheel will pop up. You can choose from the colour wheel here, adjust the tint and the shadow as well. So there's many different ways you can change colour. And then we've got up the top here this stroke, so you can actually change the stroke colour. So if I wanted something to have, say, a red edge and a black fill, and I create a circle, okay, it's going to have, and I'll just zoom in, I've got a red edge and a black circle. I'm going to choose a selection tool here, and then it's a bit like clay in Flash. So if I select this outside stroke, you can actually separate it from the fill inside. Okay, and the same here. And then with the selection tool, if you get close, you can see the cursor actually changes. So the cursor actually has this sort of curved shape next to it, and this means that we can push and we can pull shapes. So notice how we can change shapes. Same with the stroke as well. So you can get some really interesting objects and create some excellent vector images. You can also delete things with corner edges. You can get nice hard edges too. And there's lots of different ways of making shapes. So I'm just going to delete those at the moment because we won't need them for our tutorial. Okay, so let's get animating. Let's get our objects on the stage, our wallpaper. We're going to start off by going File, and we're going to import, and we're going to import to stage. Now it's really important that we have a frame in this layer. So this is our timeline, and the animation is going to happen along this timeline at 25 frames a second. Now you might have a version of Flash where your timeline is down the bottom here. This is because I have actually made the work area the classic work area. So I'm going to just go back to classic. That is what I'm used to. You choose whatever workspace that suits your workflow the best. So let's import that to stage. File, import, import to stage. I want you to find where you've stored your wallpaper. So I've put mine in a folder that's called Wallpaper. Very important to name your files and folders correctly so you can find them later on when you're doing things like this. So let's open that up, and then we'll come to an import window here. And then our layers that are in the Photoshop file actually show up in Flash, which is one of the great things about Adobe, how it's all unified. You want to convert layers to Flash layers, and you want to have this selected, and you want to make sure that you set the stage size. So remember that 550 by 440. Okay, if you select that, it's going to make it the same size as the Photoshop canvas. So this is the same size that we've selected for, I believe it was my iPhone 4S screen. So that's the pixels, so 640 pixels wide by 960 pixels tall. So hit OK there. Great. And if we have a look, and we just zoom out, so Command plus or Command minus, we can actually see our layers have imported there. And in the timeline over here, we can actually see that the Flash has actually imported them the same way that they were in Photoshop. Now let's have a look at frames. So to animate things, you actually need to have frames selected. You need to have keyframes, frames, and blank keyframes. They're the three main types. So we can already see in this layer, this is called a blank keyframe. It is just an empty frame with an empty circle inside. That means there's nothing happening in that frame. So layer 1, there's nothing in there. So if I turn the visibility of all these other frames off, okay, there's nothing in there. So we can actually just get rid of that one because we're not going to use that layer. Background layer, let's turn the visibility of that one on. Okay, just a simple background layer, nice gradient. And this is actually called, called a keyframe because there's something inside of it. There's the background layer. So I can actually select that. Okay, we can see the stage underneath. Okay, let's look at the next layer. We've got the first circle here. Okay, next layer, circle copy. Got that there. And then I've got this one, I called it picture, but I'm actually going to change that just to logo. There we go. And then we've got a padlock here, so I'm going to lock the background layer because we want it to stay the same. So it means I shouldn't be able to. I shouldn't be able to select that background, which I can't. These layers here are the circle layers, and we'll talk about why they're imported like that another time. That's to do with bitmap graphics and importing into a vector program. Okay, and then we've got just our logo here. Right, now to start animating, we need to convert these to symbols. All right, so a symbol is something that can be animated on a tween. And we'll look at that in just a moment. So let's start off with, say, the logo, and we'll convert it to a symbol. So you just need to right click or control click and convert to symbol. I'm going to call it logo. And the type, I'm just going to leave it as a movie clip, but there are 3 different types of symbols. There's a movie clip, a button when you've got interactive things, and a graphic. And we'll talk about those, the meaning of them in just a moment. I'm actually just going to keep it as a movie clip. Okay, and then just hit OK on that one. Okay, and when it converts to a symbol, we've got this lovely light blue box around the logo, and that's how we know it's a symbol. We can also check our library over here. So if I hit my library button, okay, the symbol actually gets put in here in this library, and we can actually drag it out of the library, and we can repeat the symbol over and over. So that's very useful in the future for animating. Okay, let's convert the rest of our objects to symbols. So next one, convert to symbol. I'm just going to call it circle. Which circle was it? Circle copy. Circle copy. And then the next one over. Okay, convert to symbol. Circle. Oops. Make sure you spell it correctly as well. Okay, and then if we head over to our library, we can see we've got logo, circle copy, and circle. So those are things that we're going to animate today. Okay, and to animate, we've only got one frame. If we try and move our playhead, no go. So let's add some frames in. So I'm going to go right up to, say, frame 250. We'll make it go for 10 seconds. 250. Okay, if I select this frame here, and I press FN, F5 if I'm on a MacBook, or just F5 if you're on a Mac or a PC. So FN, F5. Okay, now it's actually, then my playhead will move because I've inserted some frames in there. Same with the next one down, FN, F5. Okay, and the next one as well, FN, F5. And the next one too, we want to make sure our background layer's showing too, FN, F5. There we go. Now our playhead can play along all those frames. So we've got some things happening in there. Now to get our animation happening in there, we need to insert some motion tweens. So let's start off with the logo. I'm going to go control click or right click and create motion tween. There's three different kinds of tweens. There's a motion tween, a classic tween, and a shape tween, which has been grayed out here. The one we're going to use today is the motion tween. This is new to Flash compared to when it was owned by Macromedia. We're just going to use the motion tween, and that's just going to give us the most amount of options and the most amount of things to play with in the shortest amount of time. Okay. When we create the motion tween, we've got it highlighted blue now, so we can tell there's a motion tween in there. And I'm going to start off at frame 1. I want my logo just to be lovely and in the center and that size. I'm going to move it up in 1 second. So we'll make it 2 seconds. We'll go up to frame 50. We're actually going to make it shrink just a little bit. So to make it shrink, I need to go to my toolbox over here and select this free transform tool. Now you've got to make sure that it's not the gradient transform tool, that it's the free transform tool. Because remember, the black triangle means that there's a drop down menu. Okay, select the symbol, hold down Shift to constrain proportions and just shrink it a tiny bit. There we go. Now we can tell that this tween has actually had some values put into it because there's a little diamond on frame 50. And if we scroll our playhead back, we can actually see that the computer has calculated in all these frames that it's going to shrink. Okay, then I'm going to go up to frame 100. I'm going to make it grow just a little bit. There we go. Now if we have a look, it's going to shrink and then it's going to grow. Okay, and then I'm just going to do the same for frame 150. Just going to make it shrink a tiny bit. Remember to hold down Shift. Frame 200, make it grow. Okay, and then frame 250, we'll just go back to shrinking just a little bit. There we go. And if we scroll the playhead back, okay, we can see that it's actually just sort of like a little heartbeat, a little Ashdale heartbeat. Okay, now let's do the same thing for the next two layers. Let's go Control, click and create motion tween, or right click, create motion tween. Same with this one here, create motion tween, except this time we're going to play with the opacity. So I'm going to go over to the motion editor, which is just next to the timeline. If you don't have that up, remember you can always go through the window menu at the top there, And I'm going to get my first circle to start at 0% opacity and then go all the way up to 100. And the other one will start off at 100 and then go all the way to 0. So the one will actually fade in while the other one's fading out. So let's see what that looks like. So I have my first circle copy. Go to the motion editor and you'll have here property, value, ease, keyframes, and a little graph here, but we won't need to worry about that. So let's just close this triangle up. This one too. We don't want basic motion, we don't want transformation. What we want is a color effect, because what we're going to do is change the value of its opacity. So let's go to alpha. So alpha is another word for opacity or transparency. There's a few words that are interchangeable. So let's select alpha. Okay, the alpha is at 100%, so that means that you can fully see it. Okay, so excellent. Let's put that in. See this little square here? That means that something's been put in. And actually, I think it has to be a diamond. No, that's right. So 100%. Then go back to the timeline. Move the playhead to frame 250. Go back to the motion editor. And alpha amount you want to be 0. Notice how the graph is actually going from 100 to 0. We'll go back to the timeline and just see that in motion. So let's have a look. There we go. You can see it slowly fading out. Now with the next one, we're going to start off faded out and slowly fade it in. So select the next layer. Excellent. Go to the motion editor. We want to add a color effect, add alpha, but you want to start at 0%. Go back to the timeline, scroll along to frame 250. Okay, go back to the motion editor, and alpha you want to be 100%. Okay, back to the timeline. Let's have a little scroll through. So just press spacebar if you want to have a bit of a preview. Actually, it's enter, my mistake. Okay, and then we can see our logo slowly fade in and out, grow and shrink, and then we've got our circles are just crossing over there. And that's basically an animated wallpaper. So another way we can test it is going to Control, Test Movie, Test. Okay. Another way. Another way is we can actually export it as a GIF. So we can export movie and we can make the format an animated GIF or GIF, however you'd like to pronounce it. I actually call it GIF because the acronym stands for the Graphics Interchange Format. So G, graphics, GIF, you get the point. Okay, you can call it wallpaper. I'm just going to save it to my wallpaper actual folder as well to keep everything nice and neat. Okay, wallpaper, and save it there. Okay, here we've got things like resolution and that. I'm just going to keep it the same. Hit OK. It'll export it and then you'll be able to play it in a web browser. Okay, and that concludes the tutorial on the animated wallpaper. This is a very, very, very simple and very quick and dirty way of creating a wallpaper. I'd like you to consider using other types of effects and even animated characters if you like. There is so much room for you guys to be creative with this. This is a very simple, very, very easy way of just creating one. So I'd like to see some more images, some more types of effects, or even some character animation. It would be really nice to see. This one's probably a bit more of an ambient type of wallpaper. And that concludes the tutorial.